Hi, everybody. Welcome to Christian Homestead. My name is Jared. We're going to be talking about Community of Christ again. Recently, I made a video about the new message put out by Prophet President Stacey D. Cram on the church's YouTube channel. It seems to be part of a series of messages put out by her and others in church leadership to prepare their membership for some kind of change, like a big change, a change in operations. I tend to think that they're getting ready to sell the temple and or the auditorium, just based on the language that they've been using. And it turns out I have a viewer that used to be RLDS and has since joined our church. And he sent me an email that I thought was really interesting. And as I started to dig into it, it led me to this. There is a lot to talk about in this video. There's very good reason to believe that they will be selling the temple and or the auditorium. I'm not like rooting for their downfall or their misfortune, so please don't take that away from this. We need to be respectful toward other religions, but I run a Second Coming channel for the, not for, but I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I'm curious about how prophecy is going to play out in our church. We do believe that there is going to be a literal city of Zion, or the New Jerusalem, with a 24 temple complex in the center. And some of that land is currently owned by Community of Christ. You also have the Church of Christ temple lot that has the temple lot where the primary temple would be built. And so I don't tend to think that this area is going to be destroyed and wiped clean. There's some people that have that idea. I think it's going to be done through purchase. And I think that time is getting closer than what we realize. And even more so after making this video. As you know, I moved here to Independence last year. I used to live down by Wichita in Kansas. And before that, Arizona and Texas and Utah. I'm originally from Utah. And the first time I ever heard about the RLDS it was back before the name change to Community of Christ. I was young. I was still in elementary school, and my uncle, that's only a few years older than me, I remember him telling me about the RLDS, and I was like, what? What is that? Because I always thought that when it comes to the Restoration, Joseph Smith, the Book of Mormon, that there was only our church. That was my first encounter with one of these splinter groups. And it fascinated me. And it fascinates me even more now that I live here because this is where they're headquartered. And since I started this channel, I've had the opportunity, back when I was living in Kansas, I had the opportunity to interview the former president of the Council of the 12 Apostles of Community of Christ, Linda L. Booth. I'll put the link for this in the description box below. But that was a very enlightening video. I learned a lot about their beliefs and kind of the direction that they're going. When I moved here, one of the first big things that happened to me was I was there when their new prophet president, Stacey D. Cram, was ordained as the first female prophet president of this church. I went to the celebration that they had afterwards, which was just outside of the temple on the World Plaza. I got to meet her briefly. And I've met just ordinary members of their church. This is my other channel called Explore Church Sites. And as I was filming this, I ran into one of their members and we talked about the Stone Church. And he was talking about how a lot of their members don't realize that these buildings don't just pay for themselves, that they do need to sacrifice to keep up on maintenance and expenses and stuff like that. I asked him, well, in Community of Christ, do you sometimes change, the boundaries of your branches or your congregations? And according to him, he said, no, not typically. People are stuck in their ways and they have their congregations that they're really comfortable in, and it's just hard to get that stuff done. But he was expressing concern about the maintenance and upkeep of the stone church. I feel like you could say this is almost like the flagship church or congregation of Community of Christ, in my eyes. That's just my opinion. Met him. I met the man that's like the I don't know exactly what he is, but like the steward of this. This is across from the stone church, and it's catty corner from the temple lot on the north side of Lexington. This is called Heritage Plaza, and you have the Flournoy house right here. This is the house of the man that originally owned the temple lot and sold it to the church, sold it to Bishop Edward Partridge. His house was preserved and it was moved to this location. And then you have the groundskeeper, the steward, whatever you want to call it. I met him. He actually lives in this house. This used to be the house of one of their apostles. And then I have another viewer. This is Lori Hast. We talked about her. I think it was back in 2024. Was it 2023 or 2024? I think it was 2024. There was a large tornado outbreak that year that started in Utah, of all places. It started in the Salt Lake Valley. And there was just this rash of tornadoes, and her house was damaged by a tornado. She had to leave, and we supported her GoFundMe. Since that time, her house has been rebuilt, and she got through that trial. I happened to run into her when we were at Winter Quarters. This is the Winter Quarters Temple. I was just filming a video for my other channel, and she happened to be going to the temple that day. I don't think that that's coincidence, but that's where I learned as I was talking to her, and you can hear it in this conversation. I'll put the link for this in the description box below, that she used to be RLDS. And then another thing that I witnessed since coming here is the release of Area 70 Jeremiah Morgan. We're going to actually read what he said in this video. But I later found out that he was RLDS before joining our church. So I'm like kind of becoming fond of them and just interested in them. And I'm interested in how history is playing out. I'm a very curious person. I like history. I like news. So that's where I'm coming from. Okay. So I got this this video all started with this email. Subject line, Community of Christ. This is from Bruce Harp. Jared, I saw your podcast about the message from the president of Community of Christ Church. I was a member of the RLDS church till my family and I joined our church in 1992. I was a priest in 1984 when the document came forth to ordain women to the priesthood. By the way, we're actually going to cover that because I have a spreadsheet that has a timeline of all the what seems to me significant events in RLDS / Community of Christ history. So that's going to come toward the end. But this event that he's talking about, this led to a large schism within their church. This resulted in what's now referred to as the Restoration branches. A bunch of loosely affiliated branches that used to be part of the RLDS church, but they didn't agree with the way that the church was going. And after that, many changes took place. You mentioned that only over 5,000 members paid tithing. That's about 13%. It was 23% back before 1992. It sounds like they are making changes and decreasing their assets and independence. I was in a branch in Wabash, Indiana, which was closed in 1993. And since then, several more closed in Indiana. When I moved to Mob Noster, Missouri in 1986, we had a stake conference in Warrensburg where a new stake president was to be sustained. However, since his wife was an elder, keep in mind, he's talking about the RLDS. However, since his wife was an elder, he did not receive enough support to be selected by the stake members. So The apostle over the stake dissolved it and became a mission. And it became a mission instead of a stake. That's when different groups started breaking off from the RLDS church. From watching your podcast today, I get a feeling that the Community of Christ is reducing their assets and maybe selling the auditorium and temple, and perhaps the stone church also. Keep up the good work you are doing. I love the saints of the Community of Christ, but they seem to have serious problems with supporting the general church. I know that many, like my family did in 1992, will move on to other restoration groups. Please write me if you need anything that can help you. Bruce Harp. Well, thank you so much, Bruce Harp. I may take you up on that. So I started looking into it. Okay. Thankfully, I came across this update. Community of Christ, they post their financial updates on the church website. This is dated the 5th of March, 2024. Faithfully funding our future. I actually wonder if we've looked at this before, because this graph looks familiar to me, but I'm just surprised that I overlooked this, or maybe I just didn't realize the significance before. So you have a pie chart, and it says that 73.5% of worldwide church operating income comes from worldwide mission tithes. So 3/4, which isn't surprising. And then you have these other types of income right here. Okay, well, you go down, and then it has this table that has the years going from 2013 to 2023, the number of tithe payers or contributors, and then the percentage difference. This is really dramatic. This is really dramatic. 11.6 thousand in 2013, down to 5.9 in 2023. So that's almost half in just 10 years. And then this part breaks it up into age groups, and you can see 2019, 2020, 21, 22, and 23. So from the 0 to 17-year-old age group, in 2019, it was 304, and that was all the way down to 41 in 2023. For 18 to 23-year-olds, 36 in 2019, all the way down to 9 in 2023. And so on. Clearly, across all age groups, there's been a reduction in tithe payers. You can see that the older crowd right here, the seniors and the elderly, they're the ones that are paying the most by age group. And we have addressed that on the channel before. In other updates, it talks about the fact that they need to somehow engage the younger generations and encourage them to pay tithing. But there's a real problem with that right now, and you can see that here. And I decided to go ahead and ask Grok to just do a simple projection based off of these numbers, the total number of contributors by year. And like I said, this is an oversimplification. I don't know realistically what would happen. I would think that at some point it would reach kind of a plateau, most likely, but what do I know? And so this is what I came up with. So here are the years. You saw the graph. Here are the years. And by 2033, it says effectively 0. Projection yields a negative value that year. And then here it is visualized. So all that I can say for sure is that this part is accurate, this blue line, because those are the actual numbers of years past. But I think Grok has probably a pretty good estimate of where this is going, because even I could just draw a line like this and assume that, yeah, by about this time, it's going to be 0. Again, it's probably not going to happen, but like going all the way to 0. But it would seem that something pretty dramatic needs to happen to turn this around, wouldn't you think? And so, again, this all circles back around to the issue of the temple and the auditorium, potentially the stone church. The person that I was talking to at the stone church, he said that it was part of what they called the temple complex. So it's the auditorium, the temple itself, and the stone church. It's the temple complex. Okay, well, we've looked at this before. This is their 2026 budget. This top part, it's just like the basic numbers. You have the total income, 18.2 million. Total expenses, 17.2, with a net income of 990,000. I'm not an accountant, although that is what I was going to school for, but that was a long time ago. But it seems to me like this is just about breaking even. You would definitely want the net income to be larger, I would think. Down here, it breaks it up into these different items, and one of them, let's see. So if you just look at these last numbers here, here's like the total expense. So for this, abolish poverty, ending suffering, 774,000. Temple ministries, which is not the expenses for the temple itself, I don't think. 339,000. Formation ministries, over just a little over $500,000. But then here's communications, that's $1 million. But then when you get down to the temple complex, it's almost 3 million. And this, I think I went through this pretty carefully. That is pretty much their largest expense. It's pretty much their largest single expense. So you can see how, I mean, look, it's 3.9 or 2.9. It's just like, it towers over these other expenses that they have. So if it were me, I would think like, yeah, maybe we need to just let go of that and find some other headquarters building. It just kind of makes sense. Okay, so yeah, that kind of explains it. Again, for a church of 250,000, it's kind of shocking that you have this small of a number of people that pay tithing. 2023, just about 6,000. I would think that you would need more to sit comfortably. So anyway, let's go ahead and move on. So I mentioned, just the different people that I've met from that church. I haven't had any bad experiences. They have all been nice and kind. I do want to focus in on, I guess at this point he has emeritus status, but the former Area 70 Jeremiah Morgan. Okay, so in this video, it's interesting because there's like this big contrast, and I'm not sharing this out of like from a place of pride. It's just interesting to see the difference. So this was posted July 23rd of 2025. Elder Morgan starts out, "Dear brothers and sisters, what an amazing 5 years it has been for Rebecca and I, as we've gone out, traveled throughout the area and served. We've seen remarkable growth and strength in the church. As we look to that, we want to highlight a few of those things. Echoing the words of President Nelson, who said, 'Do you see the majesty of this moment?'" Okay, Sister Morgan. "President Nelson promised that between now and when Jesus Christ returns again, we would see some of the greatest manifestations of God's power, and we are seeing that here in our area. Let's talk about a few of those." Elder Morgan. "Over the last few weeks, 3 new stakes have been created in the Kansas City area. In addition to that, 8 new stake presidencies have been called just within the last few months. That's remarkable growth. And you guys, I remember when this was happening because, I'm meeting more and more people here in Missouri. One of the stakes that was created was the Grand River stake, which is essentially the Adamondiaman stake. Grand River is the river that goes through Adamondiaman. That area used to be part of the Far West stake. So that area has grown enough to where the Far West stake was divided. I can't remember the other ones. I think one of them was like Olathe or something. It's like on the Kansas side. Anyway, Sister Morgan, temple work and temple attendance has also continued to grow. Missionary work and missionary service have also increased substantially. Elder Morgan, the church identifies indicators of conversion and church growth. There are 9 of them. In the last 5 years, every single one of those indicators has increased in this area. Let me give you a few examples of those dramatic changes. Those that have been to the temple and have been endowed and have a current temple recommend has increased from 63% to 68%, a 5% increase, representing more than 600 members returning to the temple. That is remarkable. In addition, young men with priesthood office appropriate for their age has increased from 64% to 75%, an 11% increase. And finally, those that have gone to the temple as adults or youth to perform ordinances for their ancestors has increased from 14% to 24%, almost a quarter of members. That is a remarkable change over the last 5 years. Sister Morgan, this is spiritual momentum. God is performing miracles right here, right now. Elder Morgan, you and I can be part of that same spiritual momentum. This is the great work of the kingdom here in this area, and we can all be part of it. I testify to you, as President Nelson has said, the best is yet to come. And so it is for each of us and for this area in particular. Yeah, I feel like that's true. I feel like I'm seeing it with my own eyes. I've seen a lot of stuff happen already since we moved here in early 2025. It's pretty incredible. I thought I would go ahead and share part of this Meridian Magazine article. I'm not going to read the whole thing, of course. This was published May 15th of 2012 by Maureen Proctor. So Jeremiah Morgan used to be the stake president of Liberty, Missouri, the Liberty, Missouri stake. Later on, it talks about his conversion to our church. He made a trip to the Sacred Grove, and it says, in the Sacred Grove, he had a remarkable spiritual experience which was imprinted on his deepest soul, but which he does not detail. Quote, there's no way to duplicate the Sacred Grove, he said. That was a great moment for me. It was after this that he began to be aware of tumult in the RLDS church. Things were changing. In many ways, the teenaged Jeremiah saw it as a retreat from Joseph Smith's first vision. He heard people backing away from talking about Joseph's experience as any more significant than a quote-unquote significant religious experience. He felt that the church was backing off as well from calling the Book of Mormon revealed scripture. This was troubling to him. He saw the church of his youth as losing its original identity and understanding of the gospel. And that's interesting. Losing its original identity. We've heard Stacey D. Cram talk about that when she was interviewed by Salt Lake Tribune right after she became the new prophet president. And she talked about wanting to get past the identity crisis. That's been a big thing going on for them since the 80s. We're going to review that in just a minute. Skipping down, in high school, without telling anybody, he spent 2 months going to both the RLDS and LDS churches every Sunday. He felt that the truth had to be with the Restoration Church. The number of churches that claim that their origins begin with Joseph Smith are between 100 and 400, depending on the source. Quote, in the morning, I would go to my RLDS church, and then in the afternoon, go to the LDS church and sit in the overflow. I knew right away there was a big difference. It didn't take me long to figure that out. Later on, the changes in the RLDS church happened slowly, and her perspective also changed with time. So this is talking about his mom, who was staunchly RLDS. She was upset about him wanting to join the church. Although the church of his childhood began to move away from the Book of Mormon as its primary source, his mother did not. Quote, I think of the changes I saw over time, he said, and it reminds me of the tremendous blessings of prophets and apostles. There's always the challenge of diverging, even by degrees, from the gospel of Jesus Christ, even in fundamental beliefs about the nature of God. I love my restoration heritage, he said, and I love the restoration branches. There are some really great people there trying to do some great things. But when you have been given the whole truth, as I finally was, where do you go from there? You don't go anywhere from there. This is Jesus Christ's church. There's no doubt about it. I was grateful that I was in a position that something could open my mind and heart, that there was something else than what I had been raised to. Lastly, I want to share updates to my spreadsheet. This is called Timeline Community of Christ. You can access my spreadsheets anytime. The link is in the description box of each video. On this spreadsheet, my sources and references are in column F over here. I only say that because I'm going to zoom in so we can see this better. Okay, I still have a lot of work to do, just like with all my other spreadsheets. It's an ongoing project. I want to make these as complete as possible. It's going to take me time to hunt down exact dates and maybe even correct some of these things, but what I have here I think is mostly correct. So I don't know exactly when church headquarters was, when it became Plano, Illinois. I don't know if it was like immediately after the martyrdom of Joseph Smith, but that it seems like that's where it kind of started out, was Plano, Illinois. But the church was not formally established, or from their point of view, it was not formally reorganized until April 6th, 1860, with the ordination of Joseph Smith III as their prophet president. They felt that the next prophet should be a descendant of Joseph Smith, and so they waited for him to grow up, and then he became the first prophet president of the RLDS. In that same year, they started publishing the Herald. It's like a publication of theirs. I guess it's kind of equivalent to the Ensign or other church publications that we've had. 1873, you had the first branch organized in Independence, Missouri, even though they were still not headquartered there at that time. And this is not in reference to the Stone Church. I have some other information that I had read before. I think it was actually like near historic downtown Independence, but that original building doesn't exist anymore. In 1881, Lamoni, Iowa became headquarters of the church. This is a town that's just on the border with Missouri in Iowa. It's actually a really quaint place. There's a really cool like Amish store that just has all sorts of good stuff in there. I went and visited Liberty Hall. I actually have that video on my other channel called Explore Church Sites. It's a fun place to visit. You also, I still haven't looked it up, but I think that's the main campus of Graceland University, which is their church's college. So Lamoni, Iowa, named after Lamoni from the Book of Mormon. April 6th, 1888, Joseph Smith III lays the cornerstone for the stone church. We're going to skip this one. It doesn't have too much to do with what we're talking about. Okay. 1918, Prophet President Frederick M. Smith moves church headquarters. Oh, oops. Got a mistake there. Moves church headquarters to Independence, Missouri. So that was a big development. 1918. That's when they became headquartered here in Independence. Okay. April 11th, 1925. This was kind of a big deal. There was the implementation of something called Supreme Directional Control. And I don't know all the details of that, but suffice it to say, it was essentially a consolidation of power, I think within the first presidency. And there were a lot of people that were not happy about that. It led to a smaller schism. From what I've read, I think, a few hundred people left the church. They joined other Restoration churches like Church of Christ Temple Lot. Maybe some joined our church. I don't know. But Supreme Directional Control, that was a problem in that year. 1926, the construction of the auditorium began, and it was delayed because of the Great Depression. But that's why the auditorium looks the way that it does. It has an Art Deco style in architecture. Okay, fast forward to April 3rd, 1984. Prophet President Wallace B. Smith introduces Doctrine and Covenants 156, which allows for women to be ordained to the priesthood. And then the next year, in November, that's when women actually started being ordained to the priesthood. And this led to the much bigger schism, from my understanding. It seems like this was the event that led to the Restoration branches that we have today. Okay, so, April 6th, 1990. It's interesting, they throughout their history, it looks like they've held April 6th as a sacred date, just like us. But on April 6th, 1990, that's when ground was broken for the temple, the spiral temple here in Independence. And then it was completed in 1994. And I need to hunt down the exact date from a good source. Okay, 1996, W. Grant McMurray becomes the first prophet president from outside the Smith family. So I could imagine that if I was a member of that church, just the original RLDS church before all these changes, that would probably upset me, because it's like, no, that's one thing that sets our church apart, is the prophet president is always a descendant or a relative of Joseph Smith. And so this, I think, is significant. Oh, I should have put, it's new. So that seems to me to have been a significant development in their church, this kind of departure from tradition. Okay, April 6th of 2001, that's when they changed the name of the church to Community of Christ, although I should have put it here, but that idea was introduced in, I think, the World Conference of the year 2000. And my understanding, I've received comments on my other channel called Explore Church Sites where members of their church have said that in some instances, the original name of the church is still used for legal purposes, the Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Okay. November 10th of 2010, the National Council of Churches approved the Community of Christ as a voting member. I think there's some misunderstanding about this, or maybe I'm just not well informed, but I've heard people say that the reason why Community of Christ has made all these changes leading up to this point was because the National Council of Churches told them to do that, or told them that if they wanted to join, they'd have to get rid of all these things, these original beliefs. I'm not sure that that's true. It feels like the way that the church was going, it just kind of was, this was their natural trajectory. They were already shedding these beliefs and traditions off, and a natural next step was to join the National Council of Churches. My understanding is that this is a collection of denominations that are mainline Protestants. So they tend to be, from what I can tell, they tend to be more liberal in their beliefs. So I don't know. I need to research that some more. And then we just have these more recent developments. The sale of the Kirtland Temple, March 5th of 2024. I talked about that with Linda when I asked her about the importance of temples or how they viewed temples. She basically said that they don't have like a spiritual function. Like if anything, they're kind of like a rallying point or a beacon of light, peace. I can't remember exactly what she said, but it definitely wasn't for ordinances or anything like that. That's not how they view it. When I asked her about the Kirtland Temple, she said something to the effect that like, oh yeah, it's a historical property. It's kind of just like a museum these days. So I didn't get the sense that they really cared about it too much. I know that there were some that had a hard time with the sale. I think there's a spectrum within their church. Even with all these changes, there's still a spectrum of those that hold on to the old beliefs, at least to some extent. And then those that are just like completely going a different direction. That's what I feel like I've witnessed. And then the next most recent or major recent development was the ordination of Stacey D. Cram, the first female prophet president of Community of Christ. And she's not related to the Smith family, but it seems like that's the next biggest thing that's happened. And the way that things are going, it seems like I might be adding more to this spreadsheet in the near future, based on everything that we've been talking about, mostly since November 1st when they put out that first series of messages. I truly think that we're going to see some kind of big announcement this year. So we'll just have to watch out for that. Okay, well, that's going to be for this one. I'll talk to you guys later.